everyone, Kate here. So I'm making another video because I really want to share something that I learned about why my baby was so fussy for weeks on end, my newborn, and it's a reason that took me a really long time to figure out, and something that I never really heard of, even though I heard of a lot of other things. So just so you know, first of all, I thought that my baby was fussy because she had colic. I thought that she was fussy because she had reflux. She had silent reflux. She had GERD. She had an intolerance to dairy. She had an intolerance to soy. I almost cut out eggs. I thought she had an intolerance to my prenatal vitamin. Okay, so I went through a million different reasons as to why my baby was crying, and this was the real reason why. So thank God I figured it out, and I want to share it with you in case you have a fussy baby and you can't figure out why, or you know somebody else who does. So this reason is why my baby was fussy. It may not be the reason why your baby is fussy. However, I don't think it hurts to hear the reason. I did so much research, and coming across this changed a lot for us, and I am in a much happier and better place knowing why my baby was crying. So just a few symptoms first before I tell you what happened. So she started off being angelic like the first few weeks. By week 3, she was screaming for hours on end. After several days of the screaming, one of the first things that I thought is probably dairy. I reached out to my lactation consultant. She said, sure, try to cut out dairy and soy. You know, fussiness is normal. We don't always know why. And a lot of things that I read online said the same thing. So I cut out dairy and soy. She did tell me it was going to take 3 full weeks for the dairy and soy to completely leave my system. So we were working with a fussy baby still for a while, and there was no way to really know if it had helped. Secondly, I thought that she had colic because it's just unexplained crying as if they're in pain. A lot of the research on colic says they're not really in pain, they're just screaming as if they're in pain. I also had colic when I was a baby, so I thought that maybe it's hereditary, maybe she's just crying, maybe she has too much energy and she just needs to get it out. Maybe she's bored. I mean, I had no idea why she was screaming, but she was screaming as if she was in pain. Then I thought that she had reflux, which a bunch of other moms told me their babies had reflux, and you know, it was something to look into. Also, when we were at the doctor, at the pediatrician, I was holding the baby upright, and she started like coughing, and sort of like, it sounded like she was gagging a little bit on something that had just like come back up in her throat and gone back down. And the doctor said, does that happen often? And I said, kind of. And she's like, it sounds like reflux. Watch her. If it gets worse, we might have to put her on medicine. So I was like, I don't want that. And she said, neither do I. So, you know, you can try all these things, keep her propped up after she's done eating, etc. If you think your baby has reflux, I'm sure you've done the research and you know all the different things that they tell you to do. So I was already trying almost all of those. The one thing that I wasn't doing though is that I was trying to push her feedings to being 4 hours apart, 6 ounces at each feeding. So one of the things I tell you for reflux is do smaller, more frequent feedings. So there was no way when I was nursing to know how much she was getting, but if I did give her a bottle, she would eat 6 ounces. Like, no problem, she would finish the bottle. So if she nursed, she was nursing for 45 minutes. Now, I had done some reading, and that seemed extremely long for me, but she would drink that long without seeming to want to stop. I always read, offer it to them, offer them one side and then offer them the other side. And, you know, if they take it, then they're hungry. But my daughter was just, every time that I offered, she would drink. And so it was taking 45 minutes for her to finish. So I tried to cut the feedings down to about 20 to 25 minutes, but just feed her as frequently as she wanted to because I didn't want her to not get enough milk. So I started feeding her, again, about 20 to 25 minutes per feeding, and she would eat sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours, sometimes 1 hour, just whenever I thought she was hungry or she was showing signs of being hungry, I would feed her. And one other thing that was happening was that her poops around 6 weeks started changing a lot. They got sort of more explosive, greenish. They kind of came out like a smoothie type, like runny, mucusy a little bit, and they smelled really bad. Also, she seemed to be in pain or very uncomfortable when she was pooping. So we actually went back to the pediatrician to talk to her about this. She would grunt, her face would turn red, she would look like she's trying to push it out. Like at first it was kind of funny, like haha, her poopy face, but sometimes, a lot of times actually, the poop wouldn't come out, but you could tell that she was in pain. So the pediatrician actually recommended this, and it sounds a little gross, but moms, do what you gotta do. I used a rectal thermometer and would like take her temperature in her butt, and it would cause her to go to the bathroom to get the poop out, and then she would be happier. So it would come out and we would just change her. Sometimes we'd have to do it several times throughout the day, actually, because she seemed in pain so much. So when we told the doctor this and she asked us a bunch of questions, she basically just said, you know what, her butt muscles just might be really tight and they aren't loosening. So you might just have to keep using the thermometer. There's nothing wrong with using it. Her poops sound normal. It's probably just her butt muscles. So I was like, okay, now we have butt muscle problems, you know, like everything was a problem. So the next morning after that, she woke up really happy, and I was like, yay, she's happy. And then by the afternoon, she was screaming and crying again. So I was like, all right, something is wrong. That night, I don't even know why I decided to look this up. I think it was just God, honestly. I Googled, like, can you overfeed a breastfed baby? And I found this article, I'll put the link down below, that said, yes, you can overfeed a breastfed baby. They're especially susceptible at 0 to 3 months because of their suck reflex. So the more that I read, the more that I realized I was overfeeding my baby, and that's why she was fussy. It basically said, number one, that 2/3 of babies have some episodes of overeating. 2, reflux is normal, and all babies have reflux. Reflux is rarely the reason for babies' fussiness. The fact that most of the articles that I read on reflux talked about GERD, and it was really scary how like the milk coming back up could burn their esophagus, and you know, then they'd have all these problems and they need to go on medicine. Basically, this article told me that the milk is not going to burn their esophagus unless something is like physically wrong with them. Their bodies were made in mind with the fact that they are getting a fully liquid diet, and their esophagus, or the little like thing that closes off their stomach, is weak, and milk is going to come back up. But the milk is made in such a way that the acidity is not going to burn them. It should not be causing them any pain. Even if it's silent, even if they spit up a lot, biologically, they are made to handle that. So that was kind of a relief, a huge relief, because I was worried that she was screaming because she had, you know, her esophagus was burning. And it basically went on to say that even if the baby is showing signs of hunger, they may not really be hungry. They may want to suck because they're tired, because they're frustrated, because they're, you know, lonely, whatever. They may just want to suck because they're bored, because they like doing it. And that's exactly what my daughter was doing. So she was getting too much lactose. So lactose is a sugar that needs to be broken down by an enzyme called lactase. And a baby is able to produce lactase for a normal amount of milk, but not for an abnormal amount of milk. So most of the lactose was getting broken down, but not all of it. So some unbroken down lactose was getting through her small intestines and into her large intestines, where it was basically fermenting and creating gas and bloating and becoming sort of acidic, which is all that pain I think she was feeling when I had to use the thermometer. And then it was coming out smelling really bad. So when I realized this, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to change this tomorrow. Within 2 days, she went 2 days without pooping. Within 2 days, her poop was back to yellow, like a mustardy, seedy yellow. I basically didn't even know when she pooped. She doesn't really have a poopy face anymore. It just comes out when she's sleeping, when she's awake. There's no pain associated with it. She's not screaming in pain. The choking, the gagging, gasping for air, all the reflux stuff has stopped. Within a few days of me figuring this out, she rolled over for the first time. She laughed for the first time. She started talking a lot more, not like real words, but like baby talk. And I say all that to just say I think she's thriving now that she's not getting too much milk. However, I will say it's still really tempting for me to overfeed her. I think as mothers, one of the things that we think is the baby's hungry. I want to make sure that she's got enough food. Like in the first few weeks of her life, if she would cry a lot or not settle down to sleep right away, I thought she's probably hungry. She fights sleep a lot. And usually when she fights sleep, my first instinct is she's probably not sleeping because she's hungry. And every time I would, again, offer it to her, she would drink, even if she really wasn't hungry. So now I have to be really careful to wait enough time and wait at least 2.5 hours, if not 3, in between feedings. Because if I only wait 2 hours because I think she's hungry, the poop does go back to sort of like a smelly green. I have noticed already. So then I have to control myself and say, she's not hungry. You have to wait and just try to distract her, try to get her to sleep, try to get her more comfortable, etc. So anyway, that is basically it. I was overfeeding my baby, and it is possible when you're nursing to overfeed your baby. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, so talk to your doctor about it or do your own research. If you think that some of these symptoms are symptoms that your child is also showing. But this is what worked for me, which is why I want to share that information. A lot of times people tell you to demand feed because they don't want the baby to go hungry, which is obviously 100% true. Like, I feel that all the time. I don't want her to go hungry. But I also, in not wanting her to go hungry, I was giving her more milk than her body could handle. Oh, one more thing that this article said, which made me think this is my daughter too, is she's been gaining weight rapidly. So she gains almost 3 pounds her first month. She's gained over 6 pounds in like 2.5 months. And they said if a baby is gaining weight rapidly and is content and happy, then that's great. But if the baby is gaining weight rapidly and is very fussy, overfeeding may be what's happening. Again, I'm not trying to diagnose anything or get in trouble for any of that. I'm not a doctor. However, this is why my particular child was fussy, even though no doctor could figure it out. Not no doctor. The doctors I saw couldn't figure it out. The lactation consultant at my OB office couldn't figure it out. And I talked to many other moms who offered a lot of other solutions, but nobody really said she's probably just eating way too much. So I hope that that's helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And I hope that your baby is happy and healthy. And even if they're fussy sometimes, that it's not just screaming and crying in pain at all times, and that if you are going through that, you find the answer to whatever it is, because I know how frustrating it can be to see your baby crying in pain. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you guys soon.